Hello, everybody. We've got a show that promises to be at least mildly interesting for your listening and watching enjoyment. I'm your host, Jared Correa. I'm the CEO of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. For my monologue today, I'll be covering a bar association ethics opinion that is actually interesting. Wild, I know. In the interview, we've got two guests from the Great White North, Stuart Rudner, an employment lawyer from Montreal, and Mark Robbins, a law firm marketing specialist from Alberta. In the counter program, we're talking hockey. I didn't know what else to do with a pack of Canadiens, though. Now, let's talk about a different kind of ethics opinion. In late October, the DC Bar released Ethics Opinion 391. And they've been on a little bit of a roll here. I like the DC Bar ethics opinions. Opinion 388 about using generative AI was pretty darn good and covered some logistic questions that I haven't seen other ethics opinions cover. But this one, 391, is titled, Lawyers and Law Firms that Contemplate Agreeing with Governments to Conditions that May Limit or Shape Their Law Practices. Ripped from the headlines? The opinion identifies three major issues with such deals. The first relates to conflicts of interest. Some interesting notes here from the opinion, and I'm quoting right now. The current position of the U.S. Department of Justice, however, is that a private lawyer's adversity to any element of the federal government constitutes a conflict with the entire executive branch, if not the entire U.S. government. That means that you can't get out of a conflict simply by arguing that it's just a single agency with whom you potentially signed a deal, not the whole government. So let's shut that loophole down. Potential loophole. The opinion also suggests that it may not be possible to acquire a conflict waiver from a client where terms of a deal are unclear or could be changed unilaterally by the government. The second issue is the restriction on a lawyer's right to practice under such deals. Rule 5.6b in DC prohibits lawyers from making agreements in which a restriction on the lawyer's right to practice is part of the settlement of a controversy between parties, which the jurisdiction itself takes a pretty broad view of. What's fascinating about this is that not only is the attorney accepting the deal affected by this prohibition, but so is the government lawyer in this case, who brokers the deal. They are potentially also committing an ethics violation. The third and last issue is reflective of the professional independence of a lawyer. Effectively, this means that the lawyer must be the one to make the decision without taking on a client or not, or decide not to take on that client, as well as what type of work is undertaken for the client. And to all this, I say, it's about fucking time. Here, I was thinking that bar associations, ethical boards were just going to let democracy and the rule of law die a slow and painful death. Hopefully, more ethics opinions like this will follow, though I understand why DC was the first, given its proximity to the operations of the federal government, but these deal issues have been on the board for a while now. Now, let me pause for a second here. If you're a Trump supporter, lacking critical thinking skills, or just a rich asshole who doesn't give a fuck, I'll spell it out for you. The DC Bar is saying that the deals law firms are making with the Trump administration are likely a breach of attorney ethics. Of course, they're not saying that directly in this ethics opinion because lawyers. Now, the question becomes, what happens next? The first part of that query is whether this dissuades some law firms from agreeing to Trump's dirty deals. Those have seemed to slow down anyway, and part of that seems to have been motivated by the fact that incoming hires did not like those deals very much. Of course, all that's probably impossible to really know. But I'm hoping the threat of an ethics investigation at least makes attorneys think twice about doing this. The second part of that query is whether bar associations are going to do anything more than write ethics opinions and cross their fingers. As I said before, deals have already gone down. This is not new. Private and governmental lawyers have been involved. So, do bar associations sack up and launch investigations? And that doesn't even speak to the multiple ethics violations that Trump's DOJ attorneys are cooking up on the regular, featuring frivolous lawsuits and doctored evidence. If there was ever time to stand up for the rule of law, it would be right now. This is not a drill, homies. The country is in the grips of a fascist administration that daily engages in unprecedented corruption, abject cronyism, and lawless disregard. Attorneys are uniquely positioned to speak out. More should be doing so. So yeah, it's not just bar associations and legal ethics organizations that have been taking their sweet ass time. Republican politicians have been complicit in turning their party over to abject Nazism, rolling over in an oversight role that they should be pursuing with zeal. Many of them are lawyers. The Roberts Court has been an active participant in helping Trump to dismantle the country, bit by bit, with heinous rulings like Citizens United allowing undue influence over elections. And while an active constitutional crisis is ongoing, the court is busy using its shadow docket to allow Trump to do basically whatever the fuck he wants without having to give their reasoning as to why he can do it. The supposed top jurists in the country and some of his peers on the court are fucking cowards. Law firms that made deals with Trump have also sold out their country. Small firms and solo lawyers in the main have not said enough. They can be active agitators against the criminality of this version of the federal government in their own communities. Though I have been impressed with the work of federal and state lower court justices who have been aggressively ruling against Trump oversight. And some of those judges, and as well as some military personnel, have actually quit their jobs to speak out. Kudos to them. So, you're probably thinking at this point, look at this asshole liberal from Massachusetts. He doesn't even like Republicans. Never have. I voted for Republicans, voted for Democrats, registered independent. The thing is that this is not a Republicans versus Democrats issue. This is a fascism versus anti-fascism issue. Just like World War II. Remember that? Only this time, unfortunately, we're the Axis powers. The most patriotic thing you can do at the moment is to speak out against an administration run by a traitorous felon hell-bent on destroying democracy in exchange for his own personal gain. I want to be on the right side of history. It's a question of right or wrong, not of political affiliation. The thing that strikes me about Trump is how many Americans have been willing to give over everything this country has stood for a washed-up game show host who actively shits his pants, falls asleep on the job, and probably sucked Bill Clinton's dick. Allegedly. Actually, that's likely not true, but I am here for the memes. It might have been a horse. Anyway, there's nothing redeeming about Trump. He's a sexual predator, a liar, and a thief. But I would have thought that the Antichrist or the Manchurian candidate would have been at least a little more appealing. Now, I am hopeful that the tide is starting to turn. The last election cycle saw the Republicans get their asses handed to them, turned around on crazy margins. The Republican redistricting effort across the country seemed to have stalled out. The Texas gerrymander was just overturned in court. Other states haven't engaged. But even if the Republicans can get through those gerrymanders, it's probably not going to be enough because the predictions are based on past election results that aren't holding up in the status quo. What are the most recent numbers? Those say that the vast majority of Americans actually don't like fascist pieces of shit like Stephen Miller and Tom Homan trying to control their lives. Would have been fucking good if people had sniffed that shit out before the last presidential election. But I digress. Of course, the problem is that these very same people were just given power. So here's another big issue, probably the biggest issue. Let's say the Democrats fucking smoke Republicans and gain control of the House and Senate in the midterms, which is going to happen unless the elections are rigged. And let's say they impeach and remove Trump. Well, let's say that Trump doesn't get impeached, convicted, removed, and he just runs again in 2028. The Republicans nominate him because they're spineless sacks of shit in this hypothetical and in real life. And he loses. Does this motherfucker leave the White House? My guess is no, because he attempted a coup before, alongside his army of loser virgins and violent criminals. What happens then? Especially if the Trump administration has continued to be allowed to get its hooks into the military and fund ICE at a massive rate, abolish those motherfuckers. And further, its control over the DOJ. There may not be an endgame. The endgame may already have passed. And the sooner we can start grappling with that specific problems as Americans and preparing for it, the better. I, for one, am not enjoying this second helping of the Gilded Age turned up to 11 alongside a heaping serving of white supremacy and idiocracy. It truly is the dumbest timeline. On that note, let's bring in our Canadian friends who don't have to deal with any of this bullshit. The lucky fuckers. That's right. It's Mark Robbins and Stuart Rudner up next. Welcome back, everybody. I've effectively run out of things to say, which is awkward because this is a podcast. So I am just going to slowly sip on some Tim Hortons iced coffee. No, I'm just fucking with you. That's crazy. I don't even drink coffee, but I am talking about Tim Hortons because we've got Canadiens on the show today. It's going to be great. So let's get to it, eh? How was that? Was that good?
Jared, you could fit in perfectly here. We would welcome you with open arms.
Thank you. If things continue to go the way they do in the U.S., I may be making my way up there. All right. So as you can see, we got two guests today, if you're on the YouTubes, which is exciting. Our first guest is Stuart Rudner, who's the managing partner at Rudner Law in Toronto. And we've also got Mark Robbins, the CEO at Lawyer Locate, who is bedecked in his Toronto Maple Leafs gear. Very excited.
Yeah, well, we're gonna make you a Leaf fan, and we're gonna make you a hockey fan before the show's over. So just
check it out.
I know that's the start. That was the start.
Mark, you know I'm going to jump in here, Jared. Please do not become a Leaf fan. I want you to be a hockey fan, but there are lots of other good teams to cheer for.
Yeah, that's Stuart. Don't let them deceive you. Okay, there's a reason why it's called Leafs Nation in Canada.
Oh, there are a lot of Maple Leafs fans. Stuart, who should I like?
You should go.
Pitch me.
We've got a rule in our family, which I'm sure Mark will love. It's ABL, anyone but Leafs.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's what most of the loser teams say about the Leafs.
Yeah. So, Jared, as you can tell, we could probably do this for half an hour or so. I'll take the last word just because why the hell not?
Yes.
If you want to cheer for a team that hasn't won a Stanley Cup in about 6 decades, cheer for the Players.
Oh my God. Wow.
You cheer for a team that's second total number of Stanley Cups in the NHL? That's the Leafs.
As you can tell, we can keep going, but we'll save that for another time.
All right. Let me, we will do more hockey talk. It's a preview, everybody. I got even more hockey talk. Now, I feel like we shouldn't talk about the World Series, or should we? For listeners who are unaware, like the Blue Jays just lost a classic 7-game series to the Dodgers. I was rooting for the Blue Jays, as probably like many people in the United States were, because the Dodgers have won like 3 out of the last 5 World Series or whatever. You want to do a little breakdown? You want to get some of your emotions out? Feel free.
Sure. Okay, I'll jump in.
Mark is still salty, so I think Mark should start.
And I'm not afraid to admit that I'm a hardcore Blue Jays fan, but I like to think, a good observer of professional sports. I take my fair share of shots at the NHL, as Stuart knows, by following my socials. But I thought, and there was so many blatant errors on the field by the officials. You know, we talked in the green room. You know, one of the big ones for me was the dead ball. That's a ground rule double every day long. You know, you can Google it. You'll find that every time that's happened, and it's happened more often than you realize, it's always been ruled a ground rule double. That would have changed the game. The strike zone was a joke for the Jays. That missed call on the was it a strike? Was it a ball that got Bo Bichette out on first? You know, and I could go on and on and on and on. Do I believe going 7 games was a financial move? Absolutely.
Oh wow,
absolutely.
This is great.
I think that there's no doubt in my mind that.
Listen up, Rob Manfred.
Yeah. Well, yeah, please. Yeah, get a commissioner that actually understands baseball. That'd be a good move. I got an idea. You can have Bettman.
That's all right. Pass. Hard pass.
All right, go ahead, Stuart. You're what?
Stuart, you're not as big of a baseball fan, right? Are you over this already, or are you still a little bit hurt?
I'm over. I mean, look, I grew up in Montreal. I used to cheer for the Expos back when Montreal had a team, and I never quite got over the fact that we lost them. So I as I said in the green room, I've watched more baseball in the last 3 weeks than the last 3 decades, and I jumped on the bandwagon. I'm not afraid to admit that. I am nowhere near as salty or cynical as Mark. I mean, yeah, there were some bad calls, but we get far more bad calls in hockey than I saw in baseball. But honestly, like, as I said, you could not have scripted a more exciting World Series, including a more exciting Game 7. Yeah. Every time I tuned out to go watch hockey, I'd come back and the script had totally flipped.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, I was really hoping the Jays would pull it out. That would have been fantastic. But I mean, that was just great baseball, and it has renewed my interest in the game after many decades of pretty well ignoring it.
Bo Bichette, Vladdy Guerrero, proud members of my fantasy baseball team for many years. Good job, guys. Have you guys seen the new Montreal Expos documentary on Netflix? Who Killed the Expos?
I've been watching it. Yeah.
I gotta watch that.
It's really good.
Was just,
yeah. Okay, Stuart, as an Expos fan, who killed the Expos? Jeffrey Loria?
That's what I want to find out. All I know is I like the fact that Youppi reemerged as the mascot of the Canadiens, because I kind of thought he would disappear into obscurity. But yeah,
tremendous
I love
mascot.
The fact that I'd love to know what happened, because that was sad. And the Expos got screwed because of the strike. They would have won the World Series back a long time ago.
Yeah, they were nasty in '94. All right, let's do a little bit of legal stuff. I suppose we should. Stuart. Thanks for coming on. Tell people a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, well, look, first of all, I know we're kind of a few minutes in already, but Jared, thank you for having me. Like, I gotta say, I've loved you. I know you've had a number of podcasts. I've liked each one, but
some would say too many.
I'm not in that group. So here's where I am. I realized about 2 weeks ago that I subscribe to way too many podcasts. I think my backup is about 40 hours. So I had to start going through and unsubscribing, and I can honestly say that you made the cut, and I will continue to listen to yours.
I was going to say, we might have been first on list. We're like, let's get rid of this.
No, you're the top of the list. Like, honestly, I love the show. So thanks for having me on. And in terms of who I am, what I do, I've been practicing the law. I hate saying this, for like 26 years now, which makes me feel old. Started off at a big firm. Now I've got my own firm, Rudner Law, and all we do is employment law. So we work with employers and employees, including a lot of employers based in the U.S. who have operations in Canada and don't realize that we're not the 51st state when it comes to employment law. So a lot of our clients are American based. And what I love about employment law is, like, I'm dealing with real people, real issues. I've made some great friends over the years. A lot of friends have become clients. A lot of clients have become friends. But yeah, all we do is employment law, and fortunately, it keeps us pretty busy.
The 51st state. I mean, who would have come up with such a crazy idea? There are provinces, for God's sake. All right, how'd you get into employment law? Like, what was it about it that was appealing to you?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I don't want to take the next 20 minutes, but so I was one of those weird people who, when I was 14, knew what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer.
Is this real?
This is real.
I say this all the time on the podcast. I'm like, who is like 10 and is like, I want to be an employment lawyer? It was you.
Yeah. So I thought I was going to be a criminal lawyer, or to be more specific, and you guys are, I think, both old. Well, you are both old enough to remember this. This was all primarily based on the TV show LA Law. This was my motivation. I was going to drive around in a convertible and argue death row cases, even though we don't have death row in Canada, as I later figured out.
You were like Corbin Burson. That was you.
I was more of a, what was the other guy? The younger, better looking litigator on the show.
I know the actors. I don't know any of the lawyers' names.
Great. Anyways, I digress. So I was going to be a criminal lawyer, and growing up in Montreal, I just needed to do an undergrad degree. I didn't care what it would be. I just had to get to law school. Someone said, McGill has a great industrial relations program. And I said, sure. I had no idea what industrial relations was. But one of the courses in that program was employment law. I had a great prof who was actually from Philadelphia, who kind of got me turned on to the subject. I then also heard some interesting stories from family members, including my grandmother, who had a really interesting and really sad incident at work where she was, basically subject to religious discrimination. That kind of got me motivated. But I still thought I would probably be a criminal lawyer. And then I ended up at a big firm, and big firms don't do criminal law, but we had a great labor and employment group, including John Sprout, who's now on the bench. He was like one of the guys in the world of employment law, and I kind of learned, at his feet, as they say. So that's kind of what got me into it.
Oh, that's cool. All right, Mark, let's turn to you. Whose jersey is that, first of all?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
34, Austin Matthews,
Kirby
the
Puckett?
captain.
Oh, sorry.
No, Austin Matthews.
Okay. I've heard that name before. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say
I'm learning so much already.
He's considered the second best hockey player in the world.
After Connor McDavid.
Unfortunately, that's what people say.
This is great. I love your sports saltiness, Mark. Thank you for bringing the heat today. All right, so let's talk about you. What do you do?
What do I do? As little as humanly possible.
Tell me about it.
No, as you said, the introduction, I run a company called lawyerlocate.ca Inc., which is a Canadian national online legal referral service. We refer lawyers in Canada, people globally to lawyers in Canada. The lawyers obviously pay to be on our service, and it goes from there. And then we have Digital M Space, which is an is a website development and SEO, as well as social media management firm. And then I have LegalTube.ca, which is a production company. It also hosts my podcast, LegalTube podcast, and produces shows like Stuart Rudner's Fire Away.
Okay, I want to get to that. Let's put a pin in that for a second, though. You have an interesting background. You did all kinds of shit before you got into legal. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I was retired.
What you can
private
disclose? Yes.
Well, I can disclose. There's a lot of this stuff's really old. But yeah, I was a private investigator for 30 years. I kind of grew up in the business. My dad was a private investigator, so at a young age, when my mom was ill, I would end up being in the front seat of his car doing surveillances and helping him out. Back in the old days, and Stuart remember this, and the Family Act was somewhat different for divorces. You had to literally catch, for adultery, you literally had to catch the spouse almost in the act. So one of the tricks my dad would do when I was 10, 11 was we'd go to a Toronto Starbucks, grab a handful of newspapers, and I'd go 2 doors before the place and then get there trying to get subscriptions. And he would tell me, just look around and see if you can see any men's stuff there that's, looks out of place. So I would go and do that, and then I'd dutifully come back to the car and say, yeah, there's certainly a guy in there, Dad. Okay. So that was kind of how I got introduced to being a PI.
That sounds kind of cool, though.
No. Yeah. I mean, at 10 years old, 11 years old, you're riding around in a car with a 2-way radio, and you're learning all these techniques of how to set up surveillance, how to follow people. It was great education, and I got the bug early.
That sounds amazing. You're like Dudley Do-Right. That's not true. I just wanted to mention Dudley Do-Right. Sorry. I don't have a lot of opportunities.
You've covered more comedian content already than I think we do on my podcast.
I just want the YouTube Shorts clips. That's all.
I figured that.
So you got, the reason I wanted to have you both on together is because, Stuart, you got a podcast. Mark just mentioned it, Fire Away, and Mark helps you produce that. So, Stuart, let's start with you. Can you talk to me about how you got into podcasting in the first place?
Yeah. Well, I will give Mark credit for that. He was definitely his idea. I mean, I've known Mark, what are we going to say, about 15 years or so now, if not more?
Or more, I think.
Yeah, back when all of the legal bloggers in Toronto used to get together over beers, and Mark and I would be there. So we've known each other for years. And then when I started my firm, which is now 8 years ago, we turned to Digital M Space, and they've done our website, our socials, and Mark suggested the podcast, which I thought was a great idea. I think I was a little bit hesitant about doing it, and I'm glad that we did. But it's been a lot of fun. We've had some really cool guests, yourself included, Jared, over the years, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think it's always hard to measure how much work you get out of these things, but a lot of people do comment on the fact that by the time they call me, they feel like they know me because they've been watching all sorts of stuff, including the podcast, for years.
I got to ask, who came up with the title? Because the title Fire Away for an employment podcast is brilliant. Stuart.
All right. I wasn't sure, actually, so I'm glad you remember this, Mark.
Yeah, and it was pure. Well, I think it was the conversation, my memory, and I'm the old guy in the room, was we were sitting in your boardroom, and you had a bookshelf behind you, and predominantly on that bookshelf was a book called Fire Away. And I think we bounced it back and forth, but it certainly was his because it was part of, he had written a book and it's called Fire Away. And I thought that's a great hook. It ties nicely. And I just thought it was a great way to go.
Yeah. Actually, you're slightly off. The book's actually called You're Fired.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. You're right. See, told you. Senior
which I will give.
Stuart's over here protecting his IP. Well done, sir.
Well, actually, this is my daughter's IP because this was like 12 years ago and she would have been about 10 years old. And she's the one who came up with the idea of calling it You're Fired. And I remember fighting with our publishers because like this is like a legal text. And they thought that was far too radical a name, but they eventually agreed that we'd call it that.
That is so funny. I love that. All right, Mark, like, how do you get involved with attorneys? Like, is somebody like Stuart coming to you and being like, I'm thinking about doing a podcast? Or are you like doing the pushing and being like, hey, let's try this out?
For the most part, I'm doing the push. A lot of, like, we fell into this. We had a big client that we were doing similar to Stuart. We were doing all of his website and everything as a family law guy. And he was doing a Rogers. This actually is a good story. He was doing a Rogers cable show. I'm sure you had those community shows in the States when cable was bigger. And I'd watch it a couple times and I would complain to Natalie saying, oh, this is just crap. And he's doing it he was doing it at 7:00 at night. And, it was this really cheesy studio setup. He'd hired some PR people that I didn't really care for. So I finally,
this shit was trash.
It was bad. It was bad, and he's reading from a teleprompter. So I had lunch with him. I can't remember what the reason was. We were going over some other social stuff. And I said, here's what you need to do to this show. And I went through it. He says, whoa, well, why would I stay there? And I said, first off, nobody watches cable. Like, get with it. Everything's streaming. Like, everybody's on the internet. I said, you need to do what they call a podcast now. And so after a little bit of wrangling, he agreed for me to do it. He actually spent the time and built a little studio in one of his empty offices and had me come up there. I was in Kitchener at the time, and he was in Markham, so it was like a 2-hour drive every time I had to go see him. And got it all set up. And he had a lot of success with the show. And then we parted company, and he's got another producer doing a show. But yeah, it's still the same format that I created. And then, we got Stuart that was a guest on the show. And then we had this lawyer, a guest on Stuart's show, back and forth. But now what's happening, Jared, is because I've been pushing my podcast and I'm going to make some changes. I've got an idea I want to talk about with you guys, but and I think I'm getting traction that way, where people are starting to make inquiries as to what's going on. And then having the ability to be on your show, like, that's huge because you've got more reach than I have. You're in the States, and the beauty of podcast production is it doesn't matter where you are. It's not like the referral service where you got to be Canadian or a Canadian lawyer. I can produce your socials wherever you are. So
I love when a plan comes together. Stuart, let's go back to you for a moment. I think, like, how do you go from being a lawyer to hosting a podcast? I think a lot of people have trouble, like, being in front of the mic and then also, like, being on camera. Because a lot of lawyers are perfectionists. They see the downsides of everything first. How do you get over that mental hurdle?
Yeah. Really easily, actually. Like, I've always...
Okay, great, Mark. No, go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, we're done. Yeah. No, you know what? I've always been comfortable in front of or behind a microphone, depending on how you look at it. And people think I'm kind of weird in a sense. I actually find it more intimidating to walk into a room and try to network than to get up on a stage in front of 500 people and do a presentation.
Oh, interesting.
So, having a mic and being behind a mic is easy. And then you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, I was never one of these lawyers who thought everything I put out to the public has to be perfect. And I've watched that, when social media became a thing and I started posting on LinkedIn and then Facebook and Twitter and all that. And I would talk to other lawyers and they would ask me how I do it. And I'd say, just do it. But I would watch them struggle and spend 2 hours to to post a 15-word comment on LinkedIn because they were terrified of getting it wrong. And I'm just not that scared of getting it wrong. And doing stuff like this, like my podcast, your podcast, whatever, like, I'm confident enough I'm not going to say something absolutely horrible. And aside from that, I know that, most of the value of doing this, aside from the fun, is just people get to see your personality. So, it's just not worrying too much about what you say. It's just going and doing it.
I don't know, man. You are the rare lawyer. I don't think I've ever heard an attorney say that before. Like, just do it. It's great, though. It's refreshing.
Right. Well, this is you. That's your whole attitude, right? I mean, you clearly don't give a shit about what people think, because I've listened to enough of your podcast to know that.
Yeah.
But you're comfortable just being who you are.
Yeah. And so were you, which is great. All right, Mark. So, like, we're doing a video and audio recording right now. One of the reasons I wanted to do my own podcast is because I wanted to start doing video aggressively. Like, if you're going to do a podcast, like, video's got to be part of it, right? Why is that so important?
Because look at, you don't have to be a marketing genius to just look at the stats on YouTube. And when Google admits now, they own YouTube, but they admit that right now in demographic from 18 to 40, YouTube is searched more than Google. And that's got to hit home. I was actually late to the parade to go to the audio podcasts. Like, for the longest time, for almost 7 years, all we did with Fire Away was video. We never thought of putting it into the audio. And then finally, a guy named Danny Brown, you may or may not know him as an influencer. He really dove into podcasting, and I've known Danny for many years. He's been on my show a couple times, and we chatted. He says, "You're missing the mark, Mark. You're missing the mark, Mark. Dog with a hair lip, Mark.
Well played."
Anyway, and he said, you got to do it. So we just started putting, I think we use Podbean as our platform, and to get it out on all the podcast platforms. And I've seen a marked difference in the results we get for Stuart's show and the results I get for my show. So, yeah. And just as an aside, and I'm not doing this for any other reason other than to tell the truth, because I've worked with a lot of lawyers. And you're right about one thing with Stuart. He is a natural. I would say the first two shows, he, like anybody, there was a little bit of shakiness, and we were still feeling out how we wanted the show to be. He went from suit and tie and, kind of in the boardroom and serious to where we've got it to today, where it's far more relaxed, far more conversational. Yeah. And this, Jared, people want to see the mistakes.
Yes.
We do not overpost,
and I make plenty of them.
Yeah, I don't believe in overproducing. I mean, I think that in post, because I think what makes it interesting for the public is they don't want to see CBC News at 6. Okay. They want to see Stuart stumble for a thought or a guest kind of pause and go, "Oh, geez, what the?" Everybody wants that. Everybody loves that. And you're right. And that's the clip you want. That's the 30-second clip you want.
Right.
So, Mark, I don't know if you remember this, but I think that the single funniest thing that has ever happened, hopefully nobody can hear that ringing. There we go. Single funniest thing that's ever happened
we
on my show.
lead to mistakes in, Stuart.
Perfect. When Sean Bodden, my friend and employment lawyer in Ottawa, was a guest, and we were talking about the fact that I act as a mediator in addition to being an employment lawyer, and he was trying to talk about the fact that as a mediator, I provide a useful resource. But what he said was, "Stuart, you are a tool."
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
And we took that 5-second clip, and I think we replayed that on every social media platform for weeks because it was so priceless. But that was the type of thing that you could never have scripted, but it was so funny.
That is really funny. All right, so Stuart, I got one more question for each of you. One of the other issues I see with attorneys is they never want to start anything content-wise because they're like, what if I run out of things to talk about? I tell people all the time, you're never going to run out of things to talk about. You're always going to have too much to talk about. Do you agree with that? And was that a hurdle for you when you were starting out?
No, I totally agree. And I agree both with respect to each episode, where we could always go for hours and I always kind of wind it down when there's more we could talk about, but also just topics. And one thing that's been pretty cool actually is in the last, I'll say, year or so, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like we've definitely broadened the nature and the geography of our guests. And it's been cool. We've had more people reach out to us who have expressed interest in being on the podcast and also just the content, because it used to be a lot of people who were like, legal or legal adjacent, if I can put it that way, or HR adjacent. Now, it's a lot of, really different people with different backgrounds. And, I can try to tie it back to employment law to some degree, but I don't really strain to do that a lot often. Like there's no limit on the topics we can cover. So, I'm not worried about that at all.
So if you're concerned about that and you're listening, like Stuart said, just get your shit together and do it. Mark, and I'll come back to Stuart on this actually too, because I'm interested to hear what he has to say. But like, if I'm like a pricing attorney and I start a podcast, what am I looking for in terms of return on investment? Because I'm not looking for like millions of subscribers. Am I looking for work? No. Am I looking for exposure? Like, what am I thinking of?
Well, Stuart started off by covering earlier in the show. The main thing at the beginning you're looking for is to let the public, potential clients, know who you are. Not the stiff guy that you might be looking like on your website because you got that real formal picture. And, I've got a lawyer up here, family law lawyer, female, and she never smiles for a picture ever because she says, I have to look like I'm going to be angry, right? And I'm going to fight. Which, and I've tried a million, and there's an example of a Canadian lawyer that would be perfect on a podcast, and she refuses. She won't do it. Won't do it. But I think one of the things I wanted to bring this up anyway, and it fits with what you're asking. I've even told Stuart this, I'm starting to lean towards having our lawyers like Stuart, our podcasters, start to create like a 1-minute tip. So Stuart he does a rant, and that's a little bit different. I wanted to have him do every 2 or 3 a week, a 1-minute employment law tip, right? Because that's becoming hot. Right?
Yeah.
Everybody that's doing, and you're perceived to be giving something out there for free, right? And it attracts. So I think I'm certainly going to do it. We're just toying with my producer. I'm meeting him after your show, and we're going to toy with titles for mine. Whether it's marketing moments with Mark or something. You look for some type of stupid hook, right? I mean, you can give me your suggestions, Jarrett, because you've been around a lot longer than I have doing these things.
Yes, I'm an old soul in the podcasting arena. First of all, Stuart, is that okay with you? And then the second thing is like, what do you want to get out of a podcast as a pricing attorney?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So, Mark, the video I sent you yesterday that we called a rant, you can now call it a tip because I think we can use it either way.
It's already happening. Yes,
but I think it's a great concept, and I always have these ideas of like 1 minute, or I don't know. I always think I can do it in 30 seconds. It ends up being 90 seconds. But I like those quick hits. The short videos are great. And it's just the challenge for me is just doing it because I'm sitting at my desk and I'm in the middle of things. I'm in the car. I often end up doing these things in the car, as Mark knows.
Yeah.
Which my son thinks makes it look like I'm really busy. So it's I'm the busy lawyer on the road and taking the time to give these tips. So
for the people.
Exactly. So I think that's a great concept. And but it kind of hit on a really important point, and say Mark had a surprise for me. Mark, I'll have a surprise for you now. Like this is a conversation I actually I think we should have sometime soon. Is talking about ROI, because like I think we all know like you can never put a dollar value on like a tweet or a post or anything, but you get some idea. And I think a lot of lawyers are really concerned about that. And look, I was lucky when I was a young lawyer at a big firm. I had a mentor who said to me, like, you just need to get your name out there, become known as a subject matter expert. And over time, the work will come and you'll have your own book of business, which gives you independence, which is also true. So back at the time, what that meant is I'd go and speak at conferences and I'd write articles for printed publications. Now it's a little bit different, but the theory is the same, right? It's a lot of it is just building your profile. And the only question is, now there are so many ways you can do it. You got to try to figure out which ones are worth the time and which ones are not. And that's where trying to figure out some sort of metrics or ROI is helpful, but it's always imperfect.
Speaking of imperfect, we finished the interview section. But I had fun. Thank you guys for coming.
I thought you were actually going to shift over to Mark there when you said that. But
no, we're done with Mark.
Yeah,
we're not done with Mark. We're not done with either of you.
Can I
want to come back to the final segment?
Just a couple seconds on the ROI thing, because I have a strong view of it?
Yes, go ahead. You get the final word.
This vertical on social media, legal in Canada, and trying to show ROI is the biggest scam on people that do what I do.
You can swear.
And when I've looked at some of those ROI,
I know you're Canadian, but go ahead.
What? Can I F-bomb?
Yeah, go for it.
I've seen competitors in my industry that they fucking use absolute bullshit to come up with these bogus numbers to satisfy the client. I don't do it. And Stuart, great time for us to have this conversation, but it's not something that I believe. If I can't do it accurately, and I mean dead on accurately, it's a waste of time. And this is the problem. The only metric that you can really measure is what we do every quarter when we do all the stats on all of the platforms. That's telling you your ROI, right? It's impossible to see if you got a client, and I know you do good tracking on your intake. A lot of lawyers don't. And there's only so much information you can get from the guy that calls in or emails in saying, and you say, well, where'd you find us? How'd you get to know about us, right? Oh, I saw you on the internet. Well, did that mean it came from any of the stuff we produced for you? Was it just the website? Yeah. So, sorry, I know I'm going off on a tangent, Jared. I apologize, but it's just because I don't know the format of your show.
We clearly have no format. Go on.
Okay, I can carry on.
Yes, please.
But yeah, so I used to see it in sales in general, this whole ROI thing. And I always struggled with it, thinking like, well, what the hell are you going to prove exactly? If you're selling widgets, yeah, there's a way to track and you can actually see if you're selling physical items. But services are a bitch to try and show ROI.
Oh, yeah.
And especially legal.
Sure. Let's end there. I like it. Saltiness continues from the Blue Jays World Series. Me? I hope they don't ask.
You do.
Anyway, will you guys come back for the last segment? It'll be fun, I promise.
Of course.
If I don't have to travel too far, I'm in.
All right, great. Welcome back, everybody. That's right. We're at the Counter Program. It's a podcast within a podcast. This is a conversational space where we can address usually unrelated topics that I want to explore at a greater depth with my guests. Expect no rhyme and very little reason. Now, this is somewhat related. I was talking about Tim Hortons before, but now I really want some poutine, perhaps the greatest food ever created. But I can't eat poutine right now. I'm podcasting. Stay focused, Jared. Mark, Stuart, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I'm very happy to. And just if you want to be an authentic Canadian or actually Quebecer, which is where poutine is from, it's pronounced poutine.
Really?
So
I'm such a fucking poser, Stuart. It's embarrassing. But if you put gravy on French fries, I will eat the fuck out of it.
So when we finally get together, because I know we failed last time when I was in Boston, but we will have some really good poutine.
That would be amazing. Okay, great. So in celebration of the Great White North, I would like to play Match Game Canada edition. Actually, it's not like Match Game at all because I don't want to get sued. And that'd be too complicated to do here. So I will ask you to match a famous Canadian with their favorite NFL, goddamn it, NHL team. Famous Canadian, favorite NHL team. I feel like this is shooting fish in a barrel for you guys. Very Canadian.
Maybe.
I'm already a little intimidated, but we'll see how it goes.
There are two of you, so you have an advantage. So in your parlance, this is a power play. How did I do?
Very
correct,
good.
Right?
I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Thank you. Here we go. First famous Canadian I would like to mention is Mark Robbins. Maybe you may have heard of him. Is Mark Robbins' favorite hockey team the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Boston Bruins, or the Montreal Canadiens? What do you think?
Do I get a buzzer or something? Or how do I answer that?
Just speak up.
I can say, out of those three, it should be the Montreal Canadiens.
I was going to go Bruins, but clearly we like the Maple Leafs here. All right, that was just the warm-up. Let me ask you this. This is a question I have before we get to the real trivia. Why is it not the Maple Leaves? Anyone?
I'll try to help you and not be
Please.
too mean about it.
Okay.
In Canada, we speak English. I'll leave it at that.
Good to know. Thank you. Moving on. Famous Canadian Bret the Hitman Hart, wrestler. Do you want to guess his favorite hockey team? Or should I give you choices?
Okay. It's an easy answer.
I don't know what I'll
Easy.
guess. Okay, well, go ahead. Go for it.
Easy. Okay,
Well,
go ahead.
it's Calgary Flames.
Correct.
He's also
Correct.
part
That was
owner
gonna be
of
my
the
guess.
Calgary Hitmen in the Western Hockey League.
Really?
Yeah. The logo is
Interesting.
his logo.
Really? All right, I'm going to check that
Yeah.
out after we're done here.
Google it. Yeah, it's one of the coolest uniforms. I keep meaning to go get one jersey because I really love the jerseys.
I'm learning so much today already. And this segment may be 30 seconds because
And
you
I'm
may
also-
know all these answers.
As much as a big Leaf fan I am and Jays fan, I am the hugest Bret the Hitman Hart fan ever.
Really? I'm glad.
Yep.
I'm glad we unearthed this. This is great.
Hey,
Yeah.
I never knew that, Mark. This is taking me back like 30 years now to back when I used to watch wrestling.
Well, he's
all
a
the time.
Calgary native too, so his family, the Hart family, are revered in Alberta and in Calgary.
Okay, so I forget, what was the Hart Foundation? Was that the name of the tag
That was the
team?
tag
Is
team.
that
It was the
right?
Hart Foundation, and then they expanded. They brought some more of his brothers and in-laws into it. And the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be.
This is
Excellence of execution, Bret the Hitman Hart.
This is truly a great start. I might not even need multiple choice for this one. All right, let me give you a more challenging one this time. Gord Downie, who is the lead singer of the Tragically Hip, as I'm sure you both know. Do you know his favorite hockey team? And if not,
It's got to be.
would you like multiple choice?
I'm going to assume it's the Leafs.
Okay. Mark?
Leafs.
This may shock you. Are you both sitting down? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
People can see that you're sitting down. His favorite hockey team was the Boston Bruins.
Wow. Really?
His godfather was Harry Sinden, who was the former Bruins coach and
of
general
course.
manager.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. I was shocked.
You forgot to
find this out.
add reviled general manager.
I forgot to add that part, correct?
Yes. Don Cherry
Thank you
just
for
loved
helping me.
him. Yeah. Grapes just loved
Jared,
him.
that is great. I had no idea, and I just assumed he's from Kingston and he's all about Toronto and he'd be a Leaf guy. But that's good to know.
They have this song called 50 Mission Cap, which is about hockey, which I've never heard before, but now I have to go listen.
Yeah, 50 Mission Cap is a reference to what's his name now, Bailey, who they won at least won the Stanley Cup. He went away fishing, camping, whatever, on a small aircraft way up north. The plane crashed.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't know how many years it took
depressed.
before they found his body, but
Oh, my God.
Yep.
All right, I shouldn't have brought that up.
that's all right.
It's a great story.
Part of history, yeah.
The best part of the story is that the Leafs
what
didn't
we
really
wrote the
come
song
again
about.
until they found his body.
This is, by the way, I'm glad we're getting all the hockey talk out now. I'm not sure when I'll cover this again. We'll see what the numbers look like.
you got to, if the numbers are good, you got to bring us back. And we'll do more of this.
You'll definitely come back. All right, I got 3 more for you, all equally interesting, I hope. William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself. Do you know his favorite hockey team, or would you like multiple choice?
Ooh, Mark,
You should know this,
want
Stuart. You should know this.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with my gut then and say the Canadiens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same
Montreal
here.
native, James T. Kirk. I did not know that. He has a quote, which I discovered, where he says, "Hockey is a form of disorder in which the score is kept." Interesting. Very philosophical from William Shatner.
That's not bad.
All right, can I ask you this? Because, again, this may be the only time I get a chance to talk hockey stuff. Quebec Nordiques. How we feel, gone forever? Coming back at some point? How do people feel about the Nordiques? Do people even remember them? I do.
Oh, yeah.
I have a Nordique's hat.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you said that. When I was in Boston just a few weeks ago, there was a guy there wearing a Nordique's hat who was from Oklahoma, of all places.
That is weird.
And picked it up at a garage sale and thought it was a cool looking hat.
He had no idea that it was a team, or did he actually do any
someone
research?
told him it was a team afterward, but yeah. But anyway, so like I said before, I grew up in Montreal, so we hated the Nordiques.
Really?
Probably about as much as we hated. Yeah. Oh, it was such a massive rivalry, and some of the best bench clearing brawls you will ever see took place between the Habs and the Nordiques, including the oh my god, what was the what's it called? It was a Good Friday Massacre. That was
something like that. Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah. It was like Easter weekend. Yeah. But anyways, it's sad that they lost their team, and maybe once Gary Bettman is gone, if things change, maybe we'll get some more Canadian teams. And I would love to see the Quebec get another one, because it's that team was just taken away so quickly with no real discussion or warning. It's kind of sad.
That's okay. Their demise was very similar to the Expos. The ownership sold them out. It's absolutely the Quebec was a total. He ripped that place apart. He embezzled millions out of that team, and it's a shame. And the Toronto connection, Leaf connection, is that it was like the most horrid day in Toronto. They traded Wendell Clark, who was then our captain, to the Nordique to get Matt Sundin. Worked out pretty good for Toronto.
Yeah, worked out pretty well.
They got Wendell back 2 or 3 years later at the end of his career. So yeah, it worked out pretty well. And last thing about Nordique, I don't know if you guys seen it. Well, you'd know this, Stuart. Maybe you wouldn't, Jared. Colorado, which was the Nordique. Their third jersey, and as beautiful is a Nordique jersey that they'll be wearing this year.
Really?
Yeah, it's really, and they did a really nice job on it.
Did you notice I was just smiling and nodding when you were talking about hockey players? I'm like, oh yeah, that was great. Can I ask you one more question? What in the name of all that is holy is a Nordique?
That I have no idea. Mark, you might.
I don't know. My French is tabarnak and a few other, and that's about it. I've lost all my French, my grade 8 French, grade 9 French.
I want to leave that open because we don't want to solve every mystery on the podcast.
Well, somebody's going to comment. All right.
I hope so.
Comment.
Tom Green.
Make sure you mention my name and then Stuart's name second when you comment. Thank you.
Tom Green. Canadian comedian.
Yep.
Do you know what his favorite team is? I'll give you multiple choice if you want. You guys are hardcore.
Yeah, let's do multiple choice this time.
Sure.
Let's do Los Angeles Kings, San Jose Sharks, or Ottawa Senators. What is Tom Green's favorite team?
Ottawa
Senators.
Yeah, I was going to say Ottawa
Correct.
as well.
Because I think he lives outside of Ottawa.
Second choice, but it's good. I'm thinking Ottawa.
So I read this on Reddit, which I thought was interesting. Posted by Reddit user Little Saint Nick. Shouts to Little Saint Nick. Apparently, when the Senators started, Tom Green used to dress up as a cow and go to practice and ask the team to milk him, which is very Tom Green.
No kidding.
Yeah, and he would pretend to squirt milk on people. It's just fucked up.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So is he the one that cursed the Senators? Probably. Is that why they can never win?
That's why they suck. I don't know anything about hockey, and I know the Senators are
they're never going to get past the Melnick curse. They'll never get past that.
Who's Melnick? Just please.
He was the second owner. Second owner.
Oh.
I think he was the second owner after the original guy, who was also another scammer. I love how Bettman lets this expansion franchise. If you ever go to Ottawa and you go to their, what is it called this week? Is it a Coliseum? Is it a stadium? Is it a place? Whatever. They change the names every other year. But they've got the original from the 1900s Ottawa Senators Cup banners hanging in there. Right. It is a disgrace.
Oh, wow.
Disgrace.
This is great. You guys feel about hockey the way I feel about basketball. I feel the same way about the Lakers. Like the Minneapolis Lakers championship should not count. Fuck that.
No, it definitely should not.
Okay.
No. And Ottawa was a straight up expansion team. It was, and they just, that was the name they chose. which they probably should never have allowed them to call themselves the Ottawa Senators.
The Ottawa Poutine? Did I say that correctly? That would be something.
You said it correctly, but
couple cheese curds on the jersey.
If they're going to bring the Nordiques back, maybe Quebec gets that, but I don't think any other part of Canada would be entitled to that.
All right, last one. One of my favorite Canadiens ever, Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future, Family Ties.
Oh, he's Vancouver Canucks.
Correct. Damn, you guys are good. This is really impressive.
Why couldn't you bring Mike Myers? Like, some real easy ones.
I felt like Mike Myers was too easy, right? Because he's a Toronto fan.
Oh, he's more than he's a mega fan.
I do love Mike Myers.
He will travel the earth to go watch the Leafs when they're in the finals or in the playoffs.
What is the actual attraction of Scottish people in Canada? Like, because Mike Myers always is doing Scottish characters.
It's huge.
Really? Okay.
It's huge. Yeah. Canada's built on, not unlike the States. You're built on Brits.
That's true.
They're the ones that came over and started to do the real heavy lifting, right? And then you get the Italians came over, and now we're up to the Somalians were after the Italians, and now we're up to everything from all over.
Since we talked about Mike Myers, I would like to shout out "So I Married an Axe-Murderer," which you guys know
that's
movie.
A great movie.
I have
great movie.
I have run into several people recently who have never seen "So I Married an Axe-Murderer," which is worth watching just for the scene with the kid with the large melon who's in front of the game on the television. Hid.
You're kind of making me think, Jared, that I'm actually not a very good parent because I'm not sure if my kids have seen that. So I'm going to try that.
Let's
remedy that
at your house, Stuart.
It's the origin of Shrek. Okay. This was fun. Thanks for coming on, guys. You killed it.
Thanks to our guest, Stuart Rudner of Rudner Law. To learn more about Stuart and Rudner Law, visit rudnerlaw.ca. 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 Thanks to our guest, Mark Robbins at Lawyer Locate. To learn more about Mark and Lawyer Locate, visit lawyerlocate.ca. That's lawyerlocate.ca. Now, because I'll always be a 90s kid who still knows the words to some Our Lady Peace songs, but his true passion is burning CDs for anyone who would listen, I'm now just doing the modern version of that, which is creating Spotify playlists for every podcast episode that I record, where the songs are tangentially related to an episode topic. This week's playlist will get you sent right to the penalty box. That's correct. It's hockey songs, and it's sponsored by Tim Hortons. No, it's actually not sponsored by Tim Hortons. The fucking tariff stuff made it too difficult to manage. Join us next time when I'll tell you all about the effects of the Smoot-Hawley. Join us next time when I tell you all about the effects of the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. You're not going to love it.